Hello, it's Onesto, and in this video, you're gonna learn some best practices and best uses for Output's brand new plugin, Thermal. So I've been casually using Thermal all over my productions, and the more I use it, I just felt like I was missing out on the true creative potential in Thermal. So I spent some time last week just experimenting, trying to see the limits of what this thing can do. And I gotta say, I think I found some pretty interesting techniques that I'm so ready to show you. Enough talking, let's begin. All right, let me show you what's going on here. We have a bunch of different samples that we're gonna be playing with. And on every track, I pretty much have an EQ, I have a compressor on there, some kind of volume plugin thingy, and then Thermal is on every single track. All right, so this is the first thing that I feel like is really important whenever you use Thermal, and it's this. Thermal is a multi-effect plugin that focuses on saturation and distortion. This means that after you dial in your bread and butter processes like EQ and compression, you can then place Thermal on your track and focus first on your saturation distortion, but then you can stay in this plugin for all your more creative processes. Let me show you what I mean with this cool, quick little loop. It's a piano loop. All right, so we're gonna be messing with this. Let's open up Thermal, and what we're gonna do is just focus on saturation, and then we're going to add in some effects and see where we can go from there. All right, so let's make this band focus on this section here. The solo. All right, right up here, we'll change this to a sine drive. Okay, and now let's add in some stereo delay, turn it on, ping pong it. Make it a bit more wet, increase the feedback. Cool. All right, that sounds pretty good so far. Okay, so now we're gonna add in another stage here. We're gonna put the exponential one here. Make sure that's turned on. We're gonna have it be affecting the entire spectrum. And our effect that we'll use is chorus. So it's gonna have a kind of a warbly, thick effect like a chorus would. Increase the width, maybe a little bit of feedback. So here's without Thermal. Here's with it, fully wet. All right, that's pretty cool. Now let's go to our effects here. What I want to add is some bit reducer. And this is gonna be affecting everything. This is a global effect. Cool, let me put down this a little bit. Cool, so we can hear a little bit of the bit reducer, and then I want to make it sound even more sad. So we're gonna add in some reverb. Maybe a little bit less. Okay, so here's without. Completely dry. Here's wet. Okay, so we did all that in a single plugin. Yeah, we're adding on saturation, we're adding on distortion to different parts of the band, but then we add on all these effects. We added effects to a single section of the band in stage 1 here with stereo delay, and then on stage 2, we added chorus along with this exponential distortion. And then we added bit reducer and reverb to the entire sound. And it gave us a really dramatic change. So just by simply focusing on the distortion stage and the effects, you can get a lot out of it. like a whole lot. If you were to work like this every time you opened up thermal, it probably wouldn't be the best use of your time. You want to work fast, you want to work really fluidly. So here is another best practice to keep in mind when using thermal. The presets on thermal are really, really good. Listen to them and learn from them. I know that if I heard that from a YouTube video, I would roll my eyes and try to watch another video because that sounds like a really lame tip. But let me explain. I feel like because thermal is like a saturation plugin, you might feel like you don't need presets, like you know exactly what you want from it and how to make that happen. But thermal is a really deep and creative way to use distortion and saturation. And I know for me, as I scroll through each preset, I was really surprised. I was constantly discovering things that I didn't know was possible to do with thermal. Cool, let me show you the preset menu. There's a lot of cool categories in there. Great, so here are all these different categories. And I found that for the most part, these categories really were true. Like the drum presets really were great on drums. The lo-fi presets were great to have a lo-fi. The rhythmic gave you a lot of rhythmic type things and so on. And I found that my favorite presets were in the start here category, drums, and mix bus. I really liked all those categories. And I really want to talk about the drum presets. I thought they were super cool. And let me first make sure we have the sample loaded up. All right, cool. This one here, just some drums going on. And this is a whole drum groove. So it's kind of like a mix bus in a sense. So let me show you what this thing can do. So you've already seen all the variety that you can get out of this. I just thought it was just a really good idea just to kind of scroll through presets because you're quickly getting an idea of what can happen. But this, for example, machine tantrum, I would think it would be cool to automate it to go to dry to wet. Yeah, that could be super cool. I think my favorite is Rodent Ranger. Gosh. Dry. Yeah, it just gets really enormous and crazy and big. I feel like I want to start drilling all over again over this dumb plugin. Okay, so scroll through the presets, spend a few seconds listening to it, see if they grow on you, and I hope that you find yourself learning from the presets. Look through it, see what makes it tick. I always found that it presented new ideas to me that weren't on my radar. All right, next up is a really cool trick that's seriously easy to do, and it's using thermal to create rhythms. I don't know why the saturation plugin is allowing you to like add rhythm to your sound similar to like an LFO tool. It's really crazy. It's super easy to do. I'm going to be using this example, a saw that I'm not really proud of. Maybe I should watch my own video again that I made about saws. Okay, so it's just simply that little chord progression, has some EQ, some sidechain compression happening that's I no longer need, so I'm just gonna kill that. Okay, and then we have on thermal on the initialized patch. Okay, so I'm only gonna use a single stage of distortion. I'm not even gonna touch stages 2 and 3 because I just wanna show you how to make this thing rhythmic. So we'll go with soft clip. Just add a little bit. Cool. Super beefy and wonderful. But let me show you what happens when I turn down the output knob. It goes like almost completely quiet, which means that you can modulate that thing and have it modulate the volume in a really rhythmic way. Super cool. I love it. And remember, I'm only going to use like a single stage. You can go buck wild with stages 2 and 3 later on. But we'll just start with this. So what I'm going to do is load up a shape that I made in this LFO that I call just like downward. And you see it's going downward. Oops, that's not what I want to do. Great, so I have this shape loaded on both LFOs. I want this rate to go up to 1/8. Cool, and then the second LFO, I'll keep it at 1 bar. So what we're gonna do, we're adding, I added the downward LFO to affect the output. I'm gonna bring it up. Let me play the loop. There we go. Okay, so all of a sudden it now has this really cool LFO automated type thing. Oh my gosh. Let's also add it to the drive. Cool, and let's affect the width. This is something I like to do a lot. So we are going to add in the fast LFO to, let's see, this one here, width. There we go. And then we're going to add the downward, the slower to the sides. Cool. So now it's like doing something really fun in the stereo field. And then let's mess with this tone. And this is just like a little EQ that helps shape the tone. And we'll have the fast LFO affecting the highs, and just by a little bit. Great. And then you can also do this cool thing with a filter to kind of have like a filter being modulated. So we'll do the fast LFO and the cutoff. Great. Let's make a little mix that in. And we can do another filter here and have the slow LFO. Affect the cutoff here. Okay, great. I mean, I'm not really a big fan of the filter, what I did. Maybe I would just simply have it. Remove it. So something like that, you know? So it goes from this to that. And remember, all we did was just put in 2 LFO shapes and started modulating the output and the drive of your saturation. And that's it. That's how we created that rhythm out of that. And of course, you can go much crazier with, like, here's a preset that I thought was super cool in the rhythm section. Pad rhythm maker, I think is what, yeah. Okay, here we go. This is what this does. And what's creating that rhythm is, you know, this LFO here, which has these steps, and then it's affecting the output. So once again, of both of these distortions. And that's it. That's how you create a rhythm with thermal, which to me is just still crazy because this is supposed to be a saturation plugin, but it's really a multi-effects plugin that does saturation. Okay, moving on. Okay, now I want to talk about what I think I'm most excited to share with you all, which is how to make a preset from scratch using thermal. Because if you open it up, it kind of feels intimidating. You have all, it seems like the possibilities are endless because they sort of are, but there's like a nice flow that I want to show you so you can make a preset of your own if you like. And the example we're going to use is this preset here. So it's a rhythmic synth going on, which is super, it sounds cool already. So the first thing I do when like making my own preset, I just turn off these LFOs. I always do that because they just really distract me. I just love all the pretty colors and the lines going everywhere. So I turn that off so I can like focus. And then I go, then I start with just kind of like the GUI just really kind of gives you this flow, just starting from the left and going to the right and then going to the effects eventually. Okay, so I think the first thing, which I think is the most important when approaching your own preset. So you have all these stages, right? Like, so how do you know how much to saturate, how intense to saturate something? And this is what I discovered just by experimenting and looking through the presets as a whole. So what you want to do is, if you are setting saturation to the entire spectrum or to a big chunk of the spectrum, you want to have a really light saturation. You don't want to go too far, because if you go to like its breaking point, the breaking point where between like just a really good sounding saturated thing to like texture and noise. If you go to that breaking point, so if I go to like heavy shaper and now I add in something really intense. Okay, so like let's say I'm like, oh yeah, I really like that, but now I want to add in more saturation. Well, you're already at that breaking point. And if I add in more, it's just gonna get worse. And if I add in more, it's gonna get worse, even if I have it light. So what I like to do is if I have a saturation effect in the entire spectrum, have it kind of light. Just go easy on it. And then on your, if you have a section, so if you're just pinpointing a certain amount of like a little range of frequencies, that's where you can go a bit more extreme with your distortion. That's where you can like really push it. You can push it because only that section is being like pushed to its edge while everything else is kind of like laid back, but still nice and saturated. Something else that I thought was really helpful to know is that each stage of saturation is in series. It's not parallel, which means that what you do to stage one in regards to its distortion and even the effect and even the width and the tone. So all these things, they all then go to stage two and then it's processed by stage two. And then from there, you can get processed to straight stage three. Like knowing that they're in series just changes the way that I process. Okay, so let's actually like design a preset. So I have stage one just kind of affecting everything. Stage two, I'll focus on a little bit. Maybe like right here. Let's go to exponential. And then we'll have one more on soft clip affecting the entire spectrum again. A little bit too much. I'll bring down the wet dry knob too. Okay, so I'm liking how that sounds. So after I have all my stages in place, I'm then I ask myself, okay, do I want to add in effects to any of these stages? You know, do I want like reverb? Do I want delay? And what's helpful is that like we already have a starting point. Or you know that it's already sounding really harmonically rich and saturated. So it's like, okay, well, what can we do next? Maybe we add in a filter. You want to like kind of ease the bite a little. So I have this filter, I'm liking how it sounds. And then now maybe I want to add to this to stage three. Let's add some reverb. All right, that sounded pretty cool. And then what's nice is you can affect this tone. And my experience with this is that it's pretty sensitive. Like, okay, let's add in some chorus. Why not? Cool. I like that. I like what that's doing. Okay, so let's go to our effects. Just have that already pulled up. And now I'm gonna get back into these LFOs. One thing I like to modulate with the LFO, let's turn that off for a second, is what I really like to do is adding the sine, or just like any modulation, any shape to one of these bands here. So like the high, for instance. So now what's happening is that this is sweeping back and forth. So it's keeping out the high, then it's bringing it back in. And just kind of these LFOs really help bring some presets to life. Great, and then we'll go to stage two, adding that modulation. So now it's just kind of sweeping here. I'm kind of just like having fun, not really worrying about anything. Let's mess with the width too. All right, this will be fun to modulate with this sine wave here. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so now on effects, just as you would with anything else, but I feel like I have enough effects going on here. Yeah, I already got plenty going on. And I think like when you make presets, like you know, it's really easy to be tempted to like tweak every single thing to like make everything count. But you don't have to. Like if you like how it sounds, don't add any more effects. Don't worry about this compression here. Don't worry about the width and tone on the other stages of distortion. And honestly, I don't even mess with these like XY knobs here. Like I don't assign it to anything. I don't think I'm like that advanced quite yet. I will be soon one day, but I just don't feel like I need to use it. Yeah, I just like how this sounds and I'm just gonna stick with it. Ooh, let's do something fun and add in this drum loop on top of this. Let's add this drum loop on top of this synth that we mess with. So in context, I'm like, oh, I should put in way less reverb. Yeah, sounds way better. Okay, that was really fun. I really hope you put these best practices to use because they seriously changed the way I use thermal. I feel so much more confident and fluent using this deep and complex plugin, and I'm sure you will too. And let's be friends, subscribe to hear the latest things that I'm learning, and say hello in the comments. Later.